Okay, there are 25 piles of yellow cards, I should say, 5 by 5. And I've never really counted the number, but it's got to be in the thousands somewhere. I'm not quite sure. And the arrangements are, let's see, here's a little pack that's by its, whoops, no, sorry. Let's try this pack here. You got an outer rubber band. You've got, in many cases, inner rubber bands, but that's all I do. I don't have a triple layer, okay? Except that there's some rationale to this particular stack, or any particular stack. Mm-hmm. And, okay, well, let me just go over very rapidly these things. And I should mention, when I say this particular stack involves the concept X, mm-hmm. where the concept X is something that's familiar concept, it does not mean that everything in that stack refers to X, and it does not mean that there isn't references to X in other stacks.
Okay.
In other words, a large part of theorizing is reclassification.
Okay.
So, okay, with that understanding, I guess I'll just sit down, unless you want to sit down, actually.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay. As I say, you can speak of this as religion and ideology, this particular stack over here. Mm-hmm. And, okay, well, that's, I don't want to elaborate too much on that. But also my basic methodology is in there, because that involves a lot. That's in that 1.5, the second paragraph in that.
Right.
In other words, the weird stuff. Okay, this one is various aspects of human nature. I'm going across here like so.
Okay.
And this particular pack is unbounded rationality.
Okay.
Various aspects of that. And let's see, intuition and the unconscious. Attitudes and preferences. And feelings and emotions, etc. So that's in this little packet over here.
And overall, that stack is which?
Aspects of human nature.
Okay.
I said. And okay, this next one refers to class organization, social classes and mm-hmm. so forth and so on, and individual differences. Leadership versus the way things are, the way, you've got hierarchies, but typically you've got leaders and followers mm-hmm. in society. There's a big controversy about the role of experts versus pure democracy. Mm-hmm. And that's in this particular thing also. And okay, that's a quick summary of that particular one.
Okay.
This one refers to social conflict. The concept of social distance, which we've talked about so much, that's in this stack. And the nature of power, envy, fear, egotism, criminology, social control, war, etc. That's all on this stack here. That's what.
And then remind us when you get to the end of the stack what the stack was again, like the whole stack.
Social conflict in
okay.
general. Nationalism is in here also.
Okay.
And this one refers to various concepts of justice. Dualistic thought, reciprocity, attribution of blame or praise, and that breaks down further. Okay, so that's a quick summary of the first tier here.
And why do you have those organized in the tier? Is that because that's sort of human structures and human thinking?
No, I try to get things that are associated with each other, close to each other.
Okay.
But that's not so easy for the reason I mentioned before, that concepts are not isomorphic to individual words. You've got to it's been reclassified considerably. And yeah, I mean, these two things are similar to each other. But the concept of human nature that's in here, but it also is involved in concepts of justice. And this next one, which I'm coming to, which is ethical theories.
Okay. So is there anything on the cards that indicates what the category is?
No, not really.
Okay. All right.
But I try to make the leading card remind me of what's in that.
Okay. Ethical theories.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it isn't is because it's constantly in flux.
Sure.
And, okay, so this is, I won't say any more about this, but as I said, that's ethical theory. This one is communication and language,
Okay.
and includes things like argumentation schemes, deceptive talks, tendencies for one group to persuade another group. So in some sense, it's related to ideology, which is over here. So as I said, example of things which spread out. This one is tends to be related to time per se, although this doesn't fit in. It's experiments and case studies. And the reason that's here is in order to kind of even out, otherwise you'd have very long stacks and very short stacks.
Sure.
So I have to, for mechanical reasons, I have to spread it out. But aside from that, you've got things like things that occur fast versus things that occur slowly, the concept of revolution in general. Memory, history, past versus future, that's all in this stack over here. And this stack is pretty inconsistent, but I try to specialize things that are in space, although I'd have to rearrange these things in different ways. The growth of, economic geography is in here. What is this? Oh, networks, very important. How networks form, how social groups form, basically the same thing. How they distribute themselves in space. And then epistemology, explaining culture, and anthropological theory, various things which don't quite fit together. Okay, this one refers to, let's see, how shall we put this? First of all, it refers to demography in various categories. Economic development, the role of gender, of age, in other words, the distribution of human characteristics. And it also has reliability, because reliability refers to how long things last, and therefore it's allied to demography.
Okay.
Okay, so now I've gone through these two very rapidly. This is also economic development, but from another point of view, the history of technology, the relationship between economic development and governance, like democracy versus non-democracy, income mobility, distribution of income, and economic evolution. So these two have a certain affinity with each other. And okay, now this one is social sciences in general, including economics, sociology, social psychology, etc. And maybe that's all I want to say about this particular one. It also deals with organizations and institutions. Okay, this one is law, the structure of law, local justice, property rights. This one is, again, a kind of miscellany. The structure of what are called public goods. That is, things which the price system doesn't take care of very readily. So you've got to have government stepping in where the price system falls off. And let's see, local justice, that is comparative legal organization. Psychology and law, a specialized subject in its own right. Okay, and that's about all I want to say about that at the moment. And this one is talks about democracy and welfare economics. To what extent do democracies lead to income redistribution, for example, wealth distribution? The pros and cons of democracy, how it works, and how it does work better than you might expect it to work. And then some abstract, complex systems, multi-agent systems, and that's all I'm going to say about that one. Okay, this one represents different ways of organizing the economy and the society. Here's the laissez-faire Chicago school approach in this, and it's some of its major opponents. Liberalism, more comparisons. Okay, so that's all I want to say about that one. Now, so I've gone zip, 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 right? And let's see, this one is my biology sector, very important. How shall we describe it? Okay, a whole bunch of miscellaneous stuff. And reductionism versus emergence. Social capital. This is the case of where you have an entity which consists of parts, but the parts interact and mutually support each other, like the organs of the body, for example. You can't have the liver living independently, and you can't have a heart living independently, but if you put the liver and the heart and the lungs, etc. together, you've got something that lasts for a fair amount of time. Okay, so that's why you've got sort of odd things that don't seem to be biological fitting in here, like social capital and increasing returns to scale. Evolution and Darwinism. Phylogenies and ecosystems. So that's mostly my biological section. And these two things are economics, the next two in order. I think I won't try to go into much detail on that, but it covers quite a lot of ground. And of course, you've got other things. I mean, this is not the only place I talk about economics. You've got little dibs and dabs of it all the way through. And okay, this is my major philosophical section, and also that one. So let's see what we got. The construction of social reality, the reality of social groups. Scientific perspectivism, you remember that's one of the topics that I mentioned there. Studies in scientific realism. are scientists really in contact with the real world, or is it just a way of having a nice predictive machine for empirical regularities? A big question, not only among philosophers, but among scientists themselves. Okay, what are called qualia, that's everything outside of pleasure and pain. And that also refers to the mind-body problem and the concept of consciousness. That's in there too. And then thinking. Searching types, and you'll be interested to know that I have quite a bit on metaphor in here. Metaphor is the linguistic part of analogy. In other words, when you compare one thing with another, you have underlying concepts for each of these things, and the analogy between these two concepts is reflected in the metaphorical use of language. So that's quite important in general. And a section on fiction and on imagination. Okay. So that's that. And finally, the concept of vagueness. Vagueness versus exactitude is in here. I mean, everyday language is vague. Everything outside of pure mathematics has a certain vagueness to it. And unfortunately, the arguments among philosophers are largely, I'm afraid, a question of the correct word for something. In other words, it's linguistic disputes which really don't lead much very well. I'd even show you some books that work on that. So that's my major philosophical category. And this also goes with this, but this has special big sections for causation. That's this, causation, and science, per se. Or to be more exact, the philosophy of science is in here. Science, per se, is, of course, you've got biology, and we'll come to physics in a minute. But, okay, so that more or less finishes that tier, and now we come to the last tier. This thing is probability in various aspects, and it's a pretty tall one. It includes general probability theory, Bayesian theory in particular. Probability is applied to law as a special case. And various probability involving missing data, very important, because most of the data that we need is missing. And okay, so that's all I'll say about this. This is basically statistics as opposed to probability. In other words, applied probability to the real world. So measurement error, statistical challenges in astronomy. I'm just reading the top card here now. Bayesian methods in general, as in statistics as opposed to probability theory. Neighborhoods, in other words, the statistics applied to hierarchical structures. Okay, that's about all I want to say on that one. Let's see, what's all this stuff here? Oh, I didn't put this, wait a minute, just a minute.
Yeah, it was from one of the stacks
Oh, yeah,
in the
right,
fourth row.
I didn't put it back here. Okay, what have we here? This is a combination of the kind of operational aspects of statistics. Computational physics, positive linear systems, power laws, multivariate models, processes from machine learning, artificial life, dynamical optimization, which involves calculus of variations and other aspects of optimization in mathematics. And we're almost coming to the end here. Okay, this is mathematics, computer science, and logic. Oh, and physics, I should mention that very frequently. This is physics. This is applied mathematics of various sorts. Computer science, and a little miscellaneous pile for things that are not classified otherwise. And finally, this is environment. I mean, it's not the only place where environment is mentioned. I mean, the questions of measuring the environment create special because most of it isn't priced. So you've got to have special techniques to try to evaluate how important something is in the environment. That's why the price system breaks down more or less as far as environment is concerned, and that's why there's so much pollution around, for one thing. So that's that, and that completes my quick survey.
Why don't you show us like how an individual card works, what you have on a card? Give us an example.
Well, that varies with the cards. Let's see. Let's talk about, I'll just take this little stack at random. And as I said, it has a number of individual pieces which are segregated by these little rubber bands. And there's a big rubber band to segregate them from the rest of the pack there.
But on an individual card itself, what kind of information do you have?
Yeah, dualistic thought. Higher and lower, ideal and imperfection, prejudices.
And are these, is each yellow card indicative of a particular book that the card was in?
Sometimes many books.
Okay.
And sometimes no books at all, but it's just a general discussion of this subject.
Okay. So, I mean, they really are note cards for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more books than there are cards.
Okay.
As I say, for that reason. Status, anxiety.
So it's sort of your thoughts that you're recording on these cards and then you're putting in categories.
Well, I mean, a lot of them have, I think the great bulk of them do have at least one reference to a book. But it also has my summary of what's in the book and additional comments and cross-references. In other words, this book is related to this other book, which criticizes it, or it criticizes this other book. So I try to, this is actually organically connected from different things. Okay, so this one is on race and epistemologies of ignorance. More on race here. Measuring racial discrimination. More on discrimination. Ethnic conflict. Dynamics of ethnic competition. Okay, so that's this one little section here.
Okay.
And then we have, I'm just reading off the titles of these things. Ego expansion and property asymmetry. I mean, it's been found that if you own something, you value it much more highly than if you don't own it. So, for example, you might be willing to buy something for a certain price, but you wouldn't sell it except for a much higher price. In other words, it becomes part of your ego.
Okay.
So that's a very common finding in social psychology. Okay, identity. So here's one that doesn't have any books on it. The concept of identity. There's I am a Hindu, or I am a Jew, or something of that sort. Would be an example of identity. How one is classified, number one, by oneself, or two, by others. And then we have Veblen, the theory of the leisure class. This again is the general idea of higher and lower among social classes. All about conspicuous consumption, status through consumption, status signals, yeah, luxury fever, how rising inequality harms the middle class. This is Robert Frank. Mm-hmm. The winner take all society, what price the moral high ground, consumer culture, etc. Okay, so that's still the third thing. And then we have honor. In other words, the compulsion basically to act in a certain way, referring to the reference group that you're trying to meet its standards. Okay, honor or history, black rednecks and white liberals, honor, symbols in war, an eye for an eye, sticks and stones, reflections on human nature, honor and pride. Okay, so that's another little section. And norms as norms in general, norms as moral heuristics, absolute duties versus consequentialism, big discussion in ethical theory. Norms in the law, social norms. Okay, so that's...
And how many total yellow cards do you have here?
A couple thousand. I've never really counted them, as I mentioned to you.
Okay. And are you out of yellow cards?
Yes, well that's why I use the backs of them.
Okay.
And then I'm at the point I'm running out of backs also.
So
in some cases.
Do you remember I gave you yellow cards a couple Christmases ago? I gave you a bunch of yellow index cards because you were concerned about running out.
I think that might have been the wrong size.
So I think I gave you several sizes. Like with the idea that I wasn't sure whether you'd want lined or unlined and what.
Yeah. Well, you see, I mean, what I'm doing
size.
is I do have lots of these things. These are mainly duplicates.
Okay.
So I could cross them out and use the back for.
Okay.
Which I've done in some cases. So from that point of view, I'm in good shape. And actually, the head of the circulation desk, with whom I'm good friends, gave me. At the point where they stopped using these mm-hmm. yellow cards, she gave me her remaining supply.
Right. Where are those? Or have you used them up? You've used them up. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
All right. So that takes care of this. Now you want to take a look at the books that I have?
Sure. I'm going to stop this though.